Shabbat Shalom. It's your boy Solemn Prophet, and all praise to the Most High for another episode of Dropping Gems. I know you see that title and you're like, what's going on? And oftentimes when we get into the scriptures and we're talking about wisdom, or you think about, a person in the Bible who had wisdom, or you think about someone in your life who is sharing some type of wisdom, we often draw on certain names, certain individuals, and things come to mind, right? For example, when I think about wisdom, especially in the Bible, I think about Solomon, right? Maybe you are the same way, or maybe you have someone else in mind. But as I was reading through the Gospels, something stood out to me that I feel like is important to share with all of you. And it's often overlooked. That is the wisdom of the blind man. When I talk about the wisdom of the blind man, in John chapter 9, the Messiah, he heals a man who was blind, who was born blind. Messiah came upon him and took spit and mud and mixed it together and rubbed it in the man's eyes, right? And then told him to go and wash his eyes. And he did so, and he was no longer blind. And so after that, the rest of the chapter is a series of dialogues, and you see this back and forth between the man who has his sight now and the Pharisees, and they're interrogating him because, of course, they're trying to find fault in Messiah, because all of this happened on the Sabbath day. What I found the wisdom in was the man's responses. They went and grabbed his parents because they didn't believe that he was actually blind. Even his parents show a degree of wisdom in their responses. So, we're going to get into these scripts. All right. So in John chapter 9, verse 13, and this is when they bring the blind man to the Pharisees. And it says, they brought to the Pharisees him that aforetime was blind, and it was the Sabbath day when the Messiah made the clay and opened his eyes. Then again, the Pharisees also asked him how he had received his sight. He said unto them, he put clay upon my eyes, and I washed and do see. Therefore, said some of the Pharisees, this man is not of Elohim, because he keepeth not the Sabbath day. Others said, how can a man that is a sinner do such miracles? And there was a division among them. They say unto the blind man again, what sayest thou of him? That he hath opened thine eyes? He said, he is a prophet. But the Jews did not believe concerning him that he had been blind and received his sight, until they called the parents of him that had received his sight. The neighbors, the people that witnessed him get his sight, took him to the Pharisees. And the Pharisees is asking him, like, who do you say he is? Right? Because they're like, he's a sinner. He did this on the Sabbath day. The wickedness of the Pharisees and the hypocrisy of the Pharisees has no bounds. And they're always trying to trip you up and trap you in basically either agreeing with them or condemning yourself. But the problem is, what they're trying to condemn you to isn't even in the law. It's in their traditions that they established. The blind man's responses are so dope. And so they ask him, who do you think he is? And he responded simply, a prophet. And even though that's a simple response, right, there's a lot of wisdom in there. His parents is going to give us some insight as to why their answers are so strategic. All right, so they bring the parents in, verse 19, and they asked them, saying, is this your son, who ye say was born blind? How then doth he now see? His parents answered them and said, we know that this is our son, and that he was born blind. But by what means he now seeth, we know not. Or who hath opened his eyes, we know not. He is of age, ask him, he shall speak for himself. These words spake his parents, because they feared the Jews, for the Jews had agreed already that if any man did confess that he was Messiah, he should be put out of the synagogue. Therefore said his parents, he is of age, ask him. It's kind of like when you see those people in the interrogation rooms and they play like they don't know nothing that's going on. Even if they're innocent, they still play like they don't know what's going on, because every word can be used against you according to the law. The parents like, look, He old enough. Ask him. We know he was born blind. We know that he now can see. We don't know how it happened or who did it. He's the person you need to talk to. Go talk to him. That's literally a airtight alibi, so to speak, right? There's no way for them to be judged or condemned or kicked out of the synagogue by the Pharisees. When you get kicked out of the synagogue, you were basically like exiled from just normal society at that time. And, the scripture says that we should be as wise as a serpent and harmless as a dove. And this is an example of that right there. And this is where you begin to really see that wisdom from the blind man. Verse 24. Then again called they the man that was blind and said unto him, Give Elohim the praise. Give it to him, right? We know that this man is a sinner. He answered and said, Whether he be a sinner or no, I know not. One thing I know, that whereas I was blind, now I see. Then said they to him again, What did he to thee? How opened he thine eyes? He answered them, I have told you already, and ye did not hear. Wherefore would ye hear it again? Will ye also be his disciples? Then they then they reviled him and said, Thou art his disciple, but we are Moses' disciples. We know that Elohim spake unto Moses, As for this fellow, we know not from whence he is. The man answered and said unto them, Why herein is a marvelous thing, that ye know not from whence he is, and yet he opened mine eyes. Now we know that Elohim heareth not sinners, but if any man be a worshipper of Elohim and doeth his will, him he heareth. Since the world began, was it not heard that any man opened the eyes of one that was born blind? If this man were not of Elohim, he could do nothing. They answered and said unto him, Thou wast altogether born in sins, and dost thou teach us? And they cast him out. So he was like, Listen, all I know is I was blind, but now I see. He got to be a prophet. That's a very generic statement, because prophets, they did miraculous works. But saying someone is a prophet is much less severe than saying someone is the Messiah. He's answering very, very strategically, but he's displaying a lot of wisdom. And he actually begins to educate them, which is correcting them at the same time. He's proving that they are being wicked. They are trying to ensnare him and trap him, and also Messiah based on his own testimony. And so he's aware of this, and he's navigating through this dialogue with them, and he's answering their questions. However, but he's telling them, like, listen, you guys are calling him a sinner. Look, I don't know if he's a sinner, right? But what I do know is that somebody that is not of the Most High can't do the things that he's done. He's healed my sight. You guys ain't never healed my sight. Y'all supposed to be of the Most High. I don't know, right? And they get offended, and they say, we're Moses' disciples. How you gonna try to come and try to teach us? That scene, one, is hilarious to me. I love seeing when the Pharisees are corrected or when they're rebuked. That's how we need to, all address wickedness, and we need to expose it. So the wisdom from this blind man isn't often talked about when you talk about wisdom in general, whether at church, Bible study, but I think it's important for us to key in on this. I'm not saying put the blind man in the same category as Solomon or anything like that, but I am saying that we should always be open to receiving wisdom in any way, shape, or form from the scriptures as we read. And the blind man and his way of responding to them, I think it was very profound, personally. I just want to share that little nugget with you guys. Do with it what you will. And as always, don't just take my word for it. Go and read the scriptures for yourself. See if you received the same notion, the same insight that I received. I pray you guys have a blessed rest of your week. And I'll see you guys next time here on Droppin' Gems.